listening to Affect Autism, where affect is the #1 tool we use in supporting child development through playful interactions. Get 15% off any DIR 101 course and Introduction to DIR and DIR Floor Time through icdl.com by using the promo code AFFECTA15. That's AFFECTA15. Hello, I'm Daria Brown. Joining us this week are guests Kylil Robinson, who is an autistic self-advocate, and his mother, Shell Abraham-Montgomery, also known as Michelle. Psychologist Dr. Robert Nassif, who's podcasted with us before, introduced us, and I'm very excited to share the work they are doing with you. Kylil has been doing advocacy work in the city of Philadelphia since 2014. He is a community autism peer specialist with the Autism Service Education Resource and Training Collaborative and a part-time blogger using the hashtag ASDNext, which is part of the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services, with a small DIS before ability. Shell has worked for the School District of Philadelphia for over 20 years. She also worked for Community Behavioral Health as a family support partner with High Fidelity Wraparound, and she is a family peer specialist. In 2017, she co-founded Spectrum Success 9/11 with Kylil, and unlike other organizations, they provide a holistic approach because autism and mental health co-occurrences affect the entire family. Shell also co-founded Autistic Ambassadors with Eric Williams of Project Elijah Empowering Autism in Philadelphia, a program that they developed in 45 days to allow autistic individuals or those with mental health differences, age 12 to 24, to participate in a 6-week enrichment pilot program, which allowed siblings to participate to support their loved ones, and for participants to be work ready and to get paid doing the work that they do. I'm absolutely thrilled to share the work that they do because so much of their values are in line with DIR Floor Time. Let's meet them. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you. We're super excited to be here.
So I'd love to start with you, Kylil. You are a self-advocate. You've been sort of active and out there in advocacy work since 2014. And would you care to start by sort of telling us a bit about your story, who you are and how you got into your advocacy work?
All right, so the way I started my advocacy work was at my school, did this one program called Get to Know Us. I was at Community College of Philadelphia. Get to Know Us was basically just like a branch of those who had different disabilities, whether that was being deaf, whether that was like either being like blind, sometimes like, like having a hard time to talk, even like it was just like like various of like folks who had like like disabilities, and just like talking amongst all of them just felt like a breath of fresh air, because I remember just like being that exclusively timid one. I didn't really like know how to like present myself out there. And after talking to these guys, then my school, I kind of like picked up interest in it and actually wanted me to get involved in the district attorney's office and start talking about the opening of the Philadelphia Autism Project. But it was like quite an amazing experience. So I did that from 2014 to 2016 to the point where I slowly got my mom involved, and then we winded up on NBC 10, which then shifted over to 2022 and CBS 3. But from me being on the news at that time, that's when I picked up the two positions that you just named, being a full-time worker at the city of Philadelphia and also being a part-time blogger for ACERT. And since then, it kind of like, like made me just like, give myself like a little bit of purpose, and also like kind of like, like be proud of my advocacy work. But also like things that layered on top of myself being proud of my advocacy work was that when I was younger, doctors, I guess, like told my mother that, that I wouldn't be able to walk or talk or any of that. And instead of my mom, like, like outright telling me, I remember taking like, like these certain classes, I'm thinking, man, this don't feel like third grade. This is I didn't know what kind of class these were. And she was all like, oh, what you're in isn't like, like regular third grade class. And I was like, oh, like what is it? It's I just see like this AS thing, and what does that stand for? She said, oh yeah, so AS stands for autism support. And when you're in these kind of like classes, it's kind of like, autism. Autism isn't anything bad. Rather, it's kind of like, like Clark Kent, like when he's Clark Kent, he's just a guy with glasses. He just walk around. It's just like everybody else, but it's like once he started to bust the S out of his chest, it's a whole new being. And I'm like, like when I heard that, I was all like, man, that's pretty cool. And with that, that's where my other sense of purpose was. Like I really enjoy like, collecting comic books, playing video games, and kind of like, like relieves of stimming and stress. So with that, with that, I really did like, like I'm like fine. I'm like passionate and enjoy with that in my spare time. Right next to me being a self advocate, and sometimes even like use that as a way to just point out there that it's okay to be yourself, and also just taking your time being yourself.
So it sounds to me like your mom is awesome. And it sounds to me like she really never made you feel ashamed of who you are. She wanted to empower you to be everything that you can and want to be.
Right.
Which is awesome. And I think you're probably doing that through the work you do. You want to emulate that to others as well.
Right.
Okay, we have to hear from mom now. Shell, tell us about your experience, because just like me as a parent of an autistic child, it's not something that you ever realize is going to happen in your life. Everybody thinks they're going to have a child and, life goes on, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden the world throws, something at us, which is your child, this big doom, your child has a problem. And it's given to us as if it's this awful life sentence. And the journey that we go on as parents to realize that that is all, terrible myths that are out there. And tell us your story, how it started for you.
Yeah, pretty much it in a nutshell, right? Just to piggyback off of what Khalil said in regards to purpose, that's so true. And I'm very thankful and grateful, when, he came into my life, and I didn't at first know about the diagnosis. I didn't know early that he had some developmental delays. And the word autism didn't really enter into our life until he was about 10, because we had multiple diagnoses, misdiagnosis, and different things. And I just always had a sense of hopelessness and helplessness. And I kind of, was walking around feeling like a chicken with my head cut off. Didn't know what I was going to do next and how to help my child. They just told me that something was wrong, but at the time, nobody did know. Like we knew that he, wasn't talking, and we found out that he had fluid in his ears and he had got tubes. And after the myringotomy, and he had that procedure, but then he still wasn't talking. And I'm like, okay, so that's not it. And then, we had got the language impairment, and, and then the wonderful reactive detachment disorder came. And I'm like, what in the world is that? And they said that during his infancy, I detached from him, which caused him to react in that way, in which I said, the devil is a liar. And I refuse to accept this diagnosis. I know that whatever is going on with my son is not my fault. So it's crazy. And they will try to find different things to reason or to give you a diagnosis or to say this is why your child is behaving this way, instead of just saying we don't know at this time. Just be honest, really. And so we went through, these different diagnoses and different terminologies of why he couldn't walk or couldn't talk. And they told me he would never do these things, never be productive in society. I should, probably am going to end up institutionalizing him because he won't be, productive in society. And I just rejected that. I refused to believe that. And I just remember that day, my lowest day, and Khalil was crying. I didn't know why he was crying or how to pacify him. I'm crying, and I just was like, God, if you help me figure this out, I promise that I will do everything in my power that another parent does not feel as low as I feel right now, or as hopeless as I feel right now. And I will, make sure that, no one else feels this way. And that was the day of my purpose, as Khalil said. And he brought purpose to my life because I'm like, a lot of people walk around all of their life and never figure out what is their purpose here on earth. What is it that they're supposed to do or want to do? And I knew that I had made this promise to God that I was going to make sure that other parents never felt the way that I felt or as hopeless and helpless as I did. And sure enough, the path got brighter and brighter, and I had to make a lot of sacrifices. And that's one thing that I do like to educate and empower families, that when you have a child, you have to make sacrifices. I was in college and I had to make a decision: am I going to stay in college to get my degree and my letters, or am I going to make a sacrifice to find out more about my child and what's going on? So at that time, I dropped out and I had to go in public assistance. And I enrolled in a class to learn state and federal laws for individuals with special needs at the time. And I had to go all the way to North Philly to a Hispanic organization called HUNY, and I love them to this day because even though, they didn't turn me away. I didn't speak Spanish, and the material was written in Spanish, although most of the participants spoke Spanish. They're very limited in English, but we were all there for the same reason. We had children that had some type of disability, and we wanted to find out how to be able to advocate and help our children. And it was amazing. And so I was in the first graduating class at HUNY at that time, and I also got a certificate. I was a certified advocate. And then I started to learn how to teach and empower other families and other parents on how to advocate for their children. I joined the Homeschool Association, became a regional rep for the Homeschool Association in the Southwest District. And and it was amazing because I just remember when I had Khalil, I was 22. I was young, but I looked younger. So people talked at me and not to me. And I wanted to have a voice. I wanted to be able to be heard and respected. And through learning state and federal laws and learning how to advocate for myself, I was able to do it. And I was like, wow, like I can walk in the room and say something and people start listening. Like, oh my goodness, it was so powerful. And I loved it. And that's what inspired me to join the Homeschool Association and become a regional rep. And I wanted, get in all of these different places where I actually had a voice and not just spoke for myself, but to represent others that couldn't and teach them how to develop their choice and their voices. And then I joined a group called the Family Members Committee at Community Behavioral Health. And through this group was also an empowerment group for families. And through that, I had heard about the position opening up for high fidelity wraparound. And I applied and I got it. It was like, oh my goodness, it was amazing. And I was like, oh, because I was feeling so bad because I had to drop out of school. And I was like, I'm going to be stuck, always starting at the bottom, always having to do entry level, having to work at McDonald's or something. And that's not what I wanted for myself. But then, I believe God opened these doors for me because I made this promise, and he like rolled the red carpet out for me to be able to walk down and just be a light for other families and do the work that I had promised that I was going to do. So he enabled that for me, and I'm just so thankful and grateful. And through High Fidelity Wraparound as a family support partner, I had started off by, being the family support partner, advocating for not just the youth, but also for the entire family. And doors opened and we started flying from state to state, working with families. They had children in residential facilities. And through my education and learning about mental health and different things, and I started saying, wait a minute, a lot of things was hitting home. And it was like I was looking in the mirror. Like a lot of times I had dismissed a lot of things that I was going through with anxiety and, with also feeling the depression. And being people of color, a lot of times we are taught, and, it's tradition that you keep what happens at home stays at home, like Vegas, right? Or, you don't go telling other people your business. And we always had these secrets. And now I'm learning that this is like, a cancer, that transparency is a healing. Tell your story, help others, to let them know that they're not alone, that there is empowerment through, each other. And I learned about African word called Ubuntu. I am what I am because of who we all are. I believe that's what it is, right? Meaning that, it takes a village. And I remember growing up, when we would you go outside and you're waiting on the bus and somebody come up to you and somebody is up in the window. Like, who is that? Who's talking to you? And everybody protected. That village was always there, right? But now the village has changed. And it's like we don't have the same values, or we haven't inculcated the same thing into it. And so when I'm doing like parent coaching and, talking to the family's empowerment, and I'm saying, like, we have to bring the village back. The village is now gone. We have to now just inculcate all of those values that we had into our children before, we're gone. We don't want that to disappear with the older ones, with us now, And so just to be able to do that, and even when Khalil told, his version of how I had told him about him having autism, and I did say, it's like Clark Kent, and as Superman, he has abilities to do things that other people can't do and to know things that other people don't know. So as Superman, he has abilities. So autism is like Superman to you. It gives you the ability to know things that other people don't know and to do things that other people can't do. So it's not your disability, it's your ability. It gives you ability. And so I said, so with autism, you're never alone. And Khalil was like, yeah, it's like my wingman. And I was like, absolutely. And so even now, when it comes down to disability, I always write it with a lowercase d and a capital A, because I say, stop dissing our abilities, right? Because our ability does not define who we are.
I love that. I love that. And wow, I think I can see why you've had success in your life. And I think that an important thing that jumped out for me is that even though you had doubt and maybe even self-doubt, you took that step. You walked onto that red carpet that was laid out for you. And because you did that, all these doors opened up for you. And that's such a scary step for so many people to take. And I think having the support of someone like you is so helpful to so many families. So I love hearing your story.
So I just wanted to say, because I had said about the sacrifice that I made and how I had to drop out of school. And I always felt, bad because I didn't get my letters. But then I realized that even though at the table, I told my parents, I don't care if the other people at the table have 100 letters behind their name. MOM and DAD is the most important letters at the table. And when I learned that, I was able to sit at that table with my head high and to realize that, they might be the expert in some areas, but I am the expert of my child. And I am a leader and a team member at this table.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think especially when you bring up all of the situations where people try and make you feel small, right? Our society seems to hopefully be moving towards acceptance of listening to everybody's voices. It's in the public now that, you know, these voices are out there, you got to listen to them.
Right. And that's why we advocate nothing about us without us.
Yes, absolutely. So, how did Spectrum Success 911 come about?
Yeah, so in 2017, we I guess like like started off like with inter well, first we won this thing called a seed grant. And with that, we was going to use the seed grant to interact with other families via therapeutic games. And at first, we started off with like a large scale. So there was a building that we did do this and called the community behavior health. We did this every Thursday evening from 4 to 7, I believe. And we would just like use those small time. We just like use those small time activities, whether it was like construction and just like talking about like sound reducing. We use Play-Doh in a way where it would just like be like in a way to interact with your fingers and whatnot, and just like saying how stimming will work for those in the autism spectrum. Sometimes we would just like like use something like mirrors or a game of Uno to spark a conversation. And this actually went off like really well. Even though we had more parents than children on the spectrum, it was extremely interactive. And I think like we spanned that for about like 2 years until 2020 happened, COVID happened, and we was kind of like like stumped for a while. Somewhere I think like later 2021, we picked it back up, and instead of actually like doing it inside of a building, we decided to first do like a small check-in on Zoom. And then after we do the small check-in, if they were okay with it, then we would just do it over the families' houses. And so far, doing the interacting cases over at family houses actually did feel great. They definitely like felt more at home, and they were even like extremely like connected. And of course, we still had to follow it within the safety procedures, because it's like there's Zoom. Because COVID's still rampant. We had to still like wear on the face masks, and then also like at the same exact time next to on like wearing on the face mask. What about those who are on the spectrum and would prefer like a certain leverage of space, and sometimes like for speaking of stimming, somewhat even I prefer to be like a certain feet away from other people.
So what we were trying to help families to understand, because a lot of times they would have a TSS worker for their children or child, or they
What's TSS?
Therapeutic support
Okay.
staff person. And what was happening is that as a family peer learning, I would teach the families that you don't have to be a therapist to do something therapeutically. And that what should be happening is, if you have a therapeutic support staff person in your home, they should be transferring that skill over to you, so that when they leave, you don't feel as hopeless, or that you feel, like impaired before they came, that you'll be empowered to say, okay, thank you, because support staff should not become new family members.
Right.
They should be actually working themselves out of a job, come in, empower the family, strengthen them, transfer their skills over to the adults, and then take their leave. Work well done, excellent job. But that's not the way, unfortunately, that they do. They come in, and while they're working with the child, mom uses that time to get things done around the house that they, I guess, couldn't do, because they're engrossed with taking care of their loved one. But just helping them to understand how the power of empowerment, learning those skills that you can do it yourself, even without the letters, right? You still can be, that how everyday activities can be used in a therapeutic way. So like Khalil was saying with the Uno cards, accompanied with thoughts and feeling cards can now start engagement while you're playing cards. And it's an excellent way because a lot of times we sit down and the parent comes up to you and say, how was your day? They feel interrogated, like, I'm being interrogated. What in the world is going on? Like, they don't want to answer. But if you do it through a game, now they're paying more attention to the game, and you just change the rules a little bit. Instead of just throwing out the card that matches the color or the number, you have to answer the question too with the thoughts and feelings card. So how was your day? Then they elaborate and put out your card, and everybody is doing it. And you've learned so much about the individual. And don't be, feeling like you're left out because your child is nonverbal, because we can also use the whiteboard or the chalkboard. So there's so many different ways that we can encompass engagement and language in everyday activities in a therapeutic way. And that's what we would come in and model for them through engagement and different things as Spectrum Success 911. And also, I wanted to explain now, Spectrum Success 911 came about because in the beginning, I started off as an advocate working for another organization. And as Khalil got older, it's like, well, wait a minute, Khalil was getting older, and now we want to start to develop what's going on with him. And Khalil wanted to develop a support group and help families also. So when we thought about the name, he's on a spectrum, and that he is successful, and that all families can be successful. And the 911 is because when a diagnosis comes into the home, it does not just affect the individual, but the entire family. And so it is an emergency. If you fall and your child breaks their arm, you take them to the emergency room. And when a word is going to come into your family's life that is going to change the way you live and your life forever, that's an emergency. Absolutely, yes. So Spectrum Success 911 definitely fit. It was perfect. And so we developed Spectrum Success 911. And what's unique about Spectrum Success 911 is that we don't just cater to the individual with the diagnosis. We cater to the entire family. We do a holistic approach. So I'm doing a peer-to-peer with the mom or the dad, with the parents. Khalil is doing a peer-to-peer with the individual. And at the time, my daughter was also doing a peer if there were siblings and explaining to them. It blew my mind when I heard her tell a sibling, I never could have friends because if they were to say something about my brother, I knew I would have to fight them, or I knew our relationship would never be the same again. And it just, like, my heart just melted. Like, I did not know that was going on. And so, just being able to sit down with the family and talk to them. And our first and greatest activity that we do is called the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is an activity where we come into the home and we tell the family that if they have not already discussed the word autism, that now we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss how you felt once that word came into your life without shame, blame, or judgment. And what we do is we take the whiteboards and everybody writes it down on the whiteboard. And then we switch the whiteboard so everybody has a different board, because a lot of time, sometimes when there's some type of strife or rivalry in the family, we can't hear what they say because we already had these ill feelings against them. But if the words you're saying is somebody else's, we can't judge them because they're not yours, right? So everybody reads what's on the board. And then on the second round, we come back and we say, so why do you think the voter wrote that? And how do you feel about what they wrote? And now we're expressing empathy and allowing the writer to see and feel the love that the other family members have about what they said. And hopefully that opens the door to allow them to freely speak about what's going on. Because a lot of times, especially with partners, when the diagnosis come, one partner is on board and maybe the other one is not. But now there's causing some strife between the partners because it's like, what do you mean? Like, you're not accepting this? Because we have to do this. This is our child, right? We have to. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. But that's not true, because we have to meet people where they are. And so what I also explain is the stages of acceptance starts with rejection, First you reject it, then you accept it, and then you embrace it. Sometimes people never get to the embracement. But the thing is that you have to accept the fact that if they don't accept the diagnosis, okay, I respect that you are honest about how you feel. And how can I help you, maybe accept it? What do you need? More information, more time? But it's a loving way to respect everyone's opinion about things and help them to bring them up to where you are, and also respect where they are and meet them where they are and still love them unconditionally.
I love it. So many things you said resonated with me, like the therapist coming to the home and me excited to get my dishes done instead of participating and learning how to take on those skills to be able to help my child. And like that autism word being this big, thing that changes everything, like an emergency. And it doesn't have to be, because like you said, it's about learning about our different abilities instead of disabilities.
Yeah.
And there might be disabilities involved, but we can support and accommodate those in order to empower the person. And other things that might not be disabilities are just differences, and this person thinks differently. And then I did want to ask you about, because I asked permission before we started about it. I know that I wanted to get Kylil's take first, and then we'll get Shell's take on the puzzle piece. And you talked about the emergency, the fire truck emergency symbol. The puzzle piece is something that a lot of self-advocates have expressed disdain for, because Autism Speaks organization was created to say that autism is something that has to be cured. And I know they've changed and shifted over the years, but there's still a lot of hate for that organization and that symbol of the puzzle piece. And Kylil, I loved hearing your thoughts about it and why you guys chose to include the puzzle piece in your logo. And I think it's important to address, because it's almost an elephant in the room sometimes too, right? That whole puzzle piece. And it's different. There's so many self-advocates that have different opinions too, and they've also been influenced by different people and who they interact with. And Kylil, you now have had 8 years interacting with other autistic adults and doing advocacy yourself. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not generally against the whole entire perspective of the puzzle piece, and neither am I generally against the color blue. Because as we already know, when it comes down to days like April the 2nd, that's also not just National Autism, the National Autism Awareness Day, but also at the same exact time, that's when they painted blue, paint the town blue. So they're they were we're on the color blue, and it's all it's kind of funny, because I'm my mom and I's favorite color is blue. So I mean, I'm not gonna just completely disdain a color just because of that reason. But it's also at the same exact time, I also get where Autism Speaks is coming from, and therefore that's the thing that I'm completely against. So for example, the image of the puzzle piece itself, if you look at our puzzle piece, it's just a general puzzle piece, just generally just before this whole entire thing was blown out there. We just generally went in with the design of the puzzle piece, just to point out there that it's still there. And even then, I changed my saying from taking your time to we live in a puzzling world with infinite possibilities, because there's so much anybody on the spectrum would there's so much for anyone on the spectrum to do. You just got to give it time for it to work. But the puzzle piece that Autism Speaks uses is more of a child opening up their arms. It's not just children that's out there. What's out there, for those who are older or transitioning from that point of our lives, Yeah, other than that, I'm we have our own use of the puzzle piece. And also at the same exact time, I also have a difference take with the puzzle piece too, which is also cleverly a transitioning thing. It's puzzling out there for adults, but there's also a lot of things that we can do if we take the time to come together and paint a bigger picture.
Thanks. I love that.
Yeah, I have no ill feelings or negative thoughts about the puzzle piece. I actually like it. I mean, we use the saying that when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And the puzzle piece uh is to identify that individuality. And what also it shows is that when the pieces come together, it creates a beautiful picture. And that's what that stands out, for me with the puzzle piece, that it's unique alone, but it's beautiful together. And that's what autism is, for me. And I think about also from the mental health side of it. My daughter was diagnosed with, at the time, oppositional defiance disorder and impulsivity and some other negative words that I don't like diagnoses anyway, because they're all negative. But the thing is that what was hard for me was that with her behaviors associated with the diagnosis, I couldn't separate the behavior from the child. And I took it personally, right? And I thought that she was acting this way because she was mad at me or didn't like me, or it was something personal. All these things she was doing to me, not understanding that it was a behavior associated with the disconnect, with the diagnosis, something that she couldn't control. And also, when it comes down to even with a puzzle piece or an infinity sign, or whatever the case might be, it's not personal. It's that person's way of showing that what autism means to them is an expression. And it's not personal. So to say, well, I don't like the puzzle piece, or to get angry, everyone has their own voice, their own choice, and should be able to express their own, individuality without shame, blame, or judgment. So if the puzzle piece resonates with you, that's awesome. If it doesn't and you like the infinity sign, kudos to you too. But whatever it is, let's not shame, let's not blame, and let's not judge. We should use this strength-based language, encouragement, empowerment, speaking life into each other. That's what we need. To focus on a shape or a sign or whatever. There's so many greater things out there that we could be doing to empower each other, opposed to getting to an argument about that, is my thoughts.
I love it. And, part of the reason why I wanted to have you guys on the podcast, even though my website is, mostly about developmental individual differences relationship based model, or DIR floor time, is that we have all of the same values: strength based, holistic approach, respect, empowerment, meeting the individual where they're at, whether it's the child or the parent or the adult, and respecting individual differences, and the focus on the relationship, and parents being the ones that know their child best. All of these values are the same. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Kylil and Shell. Stay tuned next time for part 2, where we'll hear more about some of the other work they're doing, including the Awesome Movement, a safe space to share thoughts and experiences without shame, blame, or judgment. Until next time, here's to choosing play and experiencing joy every day. We Chose Play is a new series documenting my family's floor time journey. You can see the preview on YouTube, and you can register to watch the extended trailer for free at affectautism.com/play, or just go to wechoseplay.com. With each episode, you'll glean insights, tips, and reflections, what I learned and what I know now that I would tell myself back then along the way. I hope it will support caregivers in their floor time experience. We chose play. We have joy every day.